The enemies of America and Canada may be able to intimidate, bully, and enslave some of our political leaders, but they will never be able to enslave we, the free people of America and Canada. Together, we will, with unrelenting determination and unwavering commitment for the cause of freedom and liberty, march into the offices of those who embrace communism and bring our governments back to the people. Now, some of our actions may be restrained for a short period of time, but our will can't be restrained. Our fight for freedom may at times be stalled, but no matter how much time we are stalled, we the people retain the power to hold the line and advance once more toward victory. We will never quit, and we will never surrender. We are in this fight together forever, and together we will win. Let us always remember the scripture in Galatians 5:1. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm, then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers, and welcome to Tonight in America. In a few moments, we're going to be speaking with a special guest from Canada. He's been on the front lines of the fight for freedom in his country, and he has a message for the American people. But in the meantime, I have a few announcements, and then I'm going to share with you exactly how Joe Biden's America is going. To begin with, we have another special presentation Friday night at 7 p.m. We're actually going to be speaking to a farmer. Now, the Canadians know him. He's known as the crackpot farmer, but he is far from being a crackpot, folks. This guy is very knowledgeable. He's been another frontline warrior in the fight for freedom and liberty in his country, and he too will have a message for the American people. And also Alan Nicholson, remember him? Well, he did such a great job in giving people, not only in Canada and the United States, but around the world, a very, very good background on the criminal charges that the people of Canada are bringing against the Trudeau government at the Hague in Brussels. So we're going to have him on in a couple of weeks, and from time to time, at least once a month, he's going to be providing you with an update insofar as where they are and where they're going. In addition to that, folks, we're going to give you an update very soon on Project Maple Leaf. As you know, we started that about a year ago. We have just about all the information we need to put together what we would call a product, a research product, that we're going to get to every legislator in the United States Congress, as well as every member of Parliament in Canada, and then eventually publicize our findings. And we might be able to give that project and that research to Alan Nicholson to use as part of what he and what Ronald Maringer, I believe his name is. I probably messed it up, but what those two gentlemen are doing with regard to bringing Trudeau, especially him, and the Canadian Parliament to justice. So we got a lot going on. So we might find ourselves doing a lot more special broadcasts moving forward, because we simply don't have all the time in one night or two nights to give you all the information that you need to know in order to prevent your country, your family, your state from becoming influenced under what we believe to be communism. No question about it. We'll talk more about that sometime. But let's talk about Joe Biden's America. It's very interesting that he was on the air, folks, here in the United States a couple of times, and he was sharing with the American people how things are going, and he thinks they're going very well. Well, let's give you an example. The fuel oil in the United States of America is now up 68.8%. from before he became president of the United States. Eggs are up 39.8%, airline fares up 33%, gas 25% up, milk 17%, groceries up 13%. And this is the largest grocery price increase in 43 years. Baby food. This is the United States of America, folks. Could you imagine this happening here? Baby food, 12% up, meat, poultry, and fish up 8%. Inflation is wiping out every single gain the American people received well before Joe Biden became president of the United States. Now here's the problem we're running into with the Biden administration. I heard one of his administration officials on the air tonight tell us that things are well, that things are going great, that they were able to bring the prices of gas down. But folks, they brought the prices of gas down $1 after they increased it up to $5. So it was a net increase of $4 instead of $6. They really think we're stupid. They really think we're dumb. I mean, it's unbelievable. Now they're giving back students. They're paying off their debt, all right? They're paying off student loans by the millions and millions and millions. Now, what about the kids going to vocational schools? What about the ones we really need? I had enough of those Harvard eggheads and Yale eggheads. I mean, they've destroyed this country. You know, these are the products that are coming out of our colleges like Yale and Harvard. You know, they call them Ivy League colleges. Well, they ought to stick their heads back in the sand where they belong, because they have done nothing at all, as far as I'm concerned, to help this country. But you know who's helping this country? The plumbers, the carpenters, the moms, the dads, the aunts, the uncles, the people are doing the hard work out on the streets, on the highways, in the classrooms. The fact of the matter is that all this money going to people who are not serving the best interest of the American people, well, it's time we put an end to that. It's absolutely time we put an end to that. So I'm putting a call out now. What do you think of that, folks? Putting a call out to the alumni of Yale, of Harvard, and all these very elitist colleges, the alumni, the companies, the corporations that donate millions and millions of dollars to these colleges. Stop donating to them. Invest the money into some kid that's working hard, working at McDonald's 2 or 3, 4 days a week, or maybe 46 hours a week. Or some kid that's working at a veterinarian's office, cleaning up the waste and things like that. Those are the hard workers, folks. Those are the hard workers. So I've had it. I've had it with colleges in this country. I've always believed that some of the greatest people that have contributed to the wealth and stability of America are those that didn't go to college. And I'll tell you something else. I'm a naval officer, 25 years, United States Navy, right? The best naval officers that I ran into are the ones that did not go to the U.S. Naval Academy. The best naval officers I ran into are the ones that were born and bred on the streets of America. Now, that may not have been the case back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, but it certainly wasn't in the case in the early 2000s when I was in the 80s and the 90s. I can imagine how it is now. Instead of sitting in a classroom learning how to beat your enemy and destroy them, you got to learn about, well, is that a man or a woman? Is that a he? Is that a she? Is that an it? Is that a that? This is what our military is being occupied with, folks. And so here's what happens. A few months ago, we find out that the military decides that they're throwing everybody out of the U.S. military that won't get a vaccine. They're not going to get vaccinated, you're out. The best SEAL teams in America were told to pack your bags and get out. Now they find out in the military, recruitment is so low, things are so bad. Well, now they're thinking, well, maybe we have to rethink our policy on vaccines. Maybe they have to rethink their policy on what they're training our troops to do. Our U.S. military, I love them. I'll always support the troops. When it comes to General Mark Milley and the Joint Chiefs of Staff, they should be fired immediately when a new administration takes over. In fact, I've read some articles where, and I'm going to do a little bit more research on this, where they should be court-martialed and thrown out of the service for what they've done to the United States military. And now we find out today that some lawmakers, to their credit, are blasting the United States Army because the Army is suggesting that their troops go on food stamps. That is an absolute fact. Things are so bad when it comes to wages in the U.S. military that they can't afford to feed the troops. Go on food stamps, they say. You could send $800 billion to Ukraine, but you can't feed our troops. You can't even build the weapons that we need to fight and win a war. Now, let's get to that. So Joe Biden's America, you just saw what's going on. The sanctions are working great, aren't they? Anybody from Germany watching? I'm sure you're thrilled over what's happening in your country. You're going to just about freeze to death this winter. That's right. I've read the reports. Our economists have read it. In Germany, you're going to freeze to death. Why? Because of Joe Biden. He could point the finger at Vladimir Putin all he wants. Joe Biden caused this problem. Joe Biden caused the problem for the American people. Joe Biden, and by the way, his colleagues in the Democrat Communist Party here in the United States created a worldwide mess, working closely with the agenda of the Chinese Communist Party and the World Economic Forum. And we'll be hearing about the WEF a little later. So in Germany, what can I tell you? You're going to freeze. You're probably freeze to death. And yet you have that energy line, you have the oil line, you have the gas line. All you got to do is turn it on. And Joe Biden says, oh, everything is fine with NATO. Everything is fine. Fine? He's torn NATO apart. So I believe that you all who live in Germany and France and England and other countries around the world that are part of NATO, I foresee you guys saying, you know what? We better think twice before we start doing anything with regard to helping Joe Biden and the United States at this point. Because that guy is going to drag us into a war, let alone dragging us into economic chaos and distress. And speaking about being dragged into a war, those of you who have seen this broadcast day in and day out, week in and week out, month after month, and for the past couple of years, I have warned the American people, watch out, keep an eye on your kids, look what's coming. Some way, somehow, the Biden administration and the Democrats in this country are going to drag us into a ground war. It's either going to be with Russia or it's going to be somewhere in the Mideast. But Joe Biden tipped his hand a couple of days ago. He kind of let us all know where this war is going to be. Joe Biden actually said that the United States of America is now prepared to defend Taiwan. With what? With what? Our Navy's in shambles. We can no longer fight a two-ocean war. Our ships, we used to have a 600-ship fleet when Ronald Reagan was in office, and Donald Trump built the military up to that strength again after it was destroyed by Obama. And now we're down to, I understand, has to be checked, but close to 200 ships. Recruitment is down, way down. They can't even get qualified people. I'm talking about mentally fit people and physically fit people to join the military. They've had to lower the standards. Now, where did I get that information? You won't see it advertised. I think there was an article about that. But I talked to recruiters, and they told me it's terrible. They've never seen anything like it. They can't even pay people to come into the United States military. And the reason why I bring this up over and over and over again is that I've said over and over and over again, if you think your children are safe right now, well, where are we going to get the manpower? Where do you think we're going to get the manpower if the United States of America decides to defend an invasion of Taiwan? Where do you think we're going to get it? Where do you think we're going to get it if Vladimir Putin or any person on earth, Iran decides to strike Israel, or Putin decides to put his tentacles out more, and NATO gets involved in a war? What do you think? You think the Germans are sending people? You think the French? You think they're going to send their young treasure to this war, this proxy war that Joe Biden has created between Russia and Ukraine? This isn't a war between Russia and Ukraine. This is a war between the United States of America and Russia. Folks, believe me, just do a little history, do a little research, find out what the heck is real going on here. So I'm suggesting keep an eye on things. The one thing you don't want right now is anybody talking about a draft. It might happen. My view, my opinion, I've heard a lot going on. Where are we going to get the manpower? What are we going to do? And I'm concerned about that because it happened during the Vietnam War. I'm in high school, sitting in my classroom, ready to graduate. Next thing I know, I get this letter from the Selective Service. Guess what? You're being drafted. Drafted? I didn't even get a chance to have a summer vacation. And that happened to every single one of the people in my class of 1970 when I was in high school, prior to that. Many never came back home from Vietnam. I don't want to ever hear the future generations of this country say that you all stood back and allowed this to happen? We can't allow it to happen, folks. Keep an eye on things. Keep an eye on things. We could change course, and we will in November, but keep an eye on things. And finally, before we get to our guest, what do you think of this? Joe Biden and the Democrat Party, they decide that they're going to just send illegal immigrants all over America in the middle of the night. Here in New Jersey, a few weeks ago, and we aired this, we talked about it. There was a plane that landed in New York. The illegals got on a bus. The bus came down the New Jersey Turnpike, and somewhere around Edison, New Jersey, or central New Jersey at a red stop, come on, guys, have a hamburger and a hot dog. And the bus left. A whole bunch of people dropped off. Just left. And they're being dropped off all over America. Now, you have a governor named Ron DeSantis in Florida, the governor of Arizona, the governor of Texas, and some other Republican governors are saying, whoa, wait a minute. Wait a minute. They're not going to come to our state or our city. This is not a sanctuary state, but New York is, Delaware is, Chicago is, Washington, D.C. is. They're all sanctuary cities and states. Let's get him back on that bus. And he did. And they all went to these sanctuary cities and states. And all of a sudden, the mayor of New York and Chicago and the mayor of D.C., wait a minute, we can't handle all these people, but you guys are sanctuary refuges. You're sanctuary cities, you're sanctuary states. You want them there, right? You beg them. Why is it good? Why is it okay for them to come to a non-sanctuary state, but no good to go to yours where you welcome them? So they made some noise. And then the bomb dropped. Man, it was a great bomb. The bomb dropped when Ron DeSantis decided to send plane loads of illegal immigrants, him and the Texas and Arizona governor, by the way, to Martha's Vineyard, where all the rich and famous live. The elite of America, and maybe some from around the world, all their wonderful mansions with their beachfronts, where they could just lay out in the sun and stay away from all us commoners. Well, they got flooded, and it wasn't by water. They got flooded by illegal immigrants. And I got to tell you, they are not happy in Martha's Vineyard. The Kennedys, the Obamas, the Clintons, all of those people that were allowing policies to get passed and supporting policies to cart all these people to those of us who live in these cities where we just don't have any resources to help them or to be involved with them. They're all complaining. They were complaining, we got no notice. Nobody told us. New York City mayor, nobody told us they were coming. You didn't tell me they were coming here. You didn't tell anybody in these, where the commoners live. You didn't tell us they were coming. I guess it's okay, folks. It's okay for the Biden administration and the Democrat Party in the middle of the night to send plane loads of people to our neighborhoods, to our homes, to flood our schools, and expect us to feed everyone. Right? But it's not okay for them to live in Martha's Vineyard. Well, you know what I say? Send thousands there. Send thousands there. I feel sorry for these people for one reason. They're here illegally and they should be deported immediately. They're criminals. That's it. They're violating the law. But you know what's sad about this whole story? They probably don't even know they're violating the law because you got a president in the White House who's saying, come on, it's okay. Don't worry about it. So I won't blame them. A lot of them are not educated. A lot of them really want to flee a lot of the problems that they're facing. So I'll give them a little bit of a pass. They've been deceived by the United States president and his administration. To the point where the vice president of the United States, Kamala Harris, says, we don't have a problem at the border. What are you talking about? Another one that I don't know if she's from Harvard or Yale or anything like that, but wherever she's from, she needs to bury her head in the sand with the rest of them. She has no idea what's going on. That's the state of America tonight. The state of America tonight. But there's hope. There is hope at the end of this tunnel, believe me. And we'll talk about that later on. But let's talk now to a gentleman from Canada. He is on the front lines of fighting for freedom in his country. His name is Carl Krebs. And Carlson's an independent business owner operator. So see, we're talking about a guy that's down there in the grit and in the dirt, right? With us commoners. He's an independent business owner operator. He's operated retail businesses and wholesale businesses as a broker, and he has been very, very successful. And he recently completed a career in OTR, long distance trucking between Canada and the United States. Well, there, my friend Carl, thank you and welcome to Tonight in America.
Well, thank you very much for the invite to be on your show, Lieutenant Rogers. I've heard a lot of good things, and I was looking forward to speaking with you tonight.
Well, you're going to be speaking with me, and I know you're going to be speaking with your fellow countrymen and countrywomen, and there's going to be a lot of Americans watching. And you and I talked earlier, you certainly have a story, and that story is indeed a message for the American people.
Yes, it is. You know, despite what anybody might say, and I've had conversations at the highest level in my small city here. We are a city of under 14,000, but, you know, comparatively in the province, one of the larger cities. And we've been in the crosshairs of this local government, of our provincial government, and of our federal government for quite some time, because in Winkler, people believe in choice. They believe in bodily autonomy, and our low jab rate, I hate to call it a vaccination because it isn't. The low jab rate speaks to the fact that people are resolved that they're going to make a choice for themselves in this community, and no government is going to tell them what to do.
Now, Carl, give us an idea what you've done. I mean, you look at you. I've done some research on you. You know, we've done some background check on you, and you're a very successful man. I mean, very successful businessman. And am I wrong when I say you left most of what you were doing to fight for your country?
Well, you know, I've had a number of different careers, and I would say I've been successful in all of them, some more than others. But in last summer, it was made apparent and very, very clear to me that the way our industry was going in long distance hauling, that we were going to have to choose between our health care and our paycheck. And that should never happen in a democratically elected country. And so I kind of put a fleece before God, as our industry has been under siege and rates are dropping while expenses are going up, that if I was going to have to run any more empty miles or do anything else that did not square with my code, that I would step out. I did not know what I was stepping out to, but I believed I was going to follow God. And it was quite by divine appointments. I don't believe in these chance encounters, that a few weeks later I found myself speaking to my fellow citizens of the city and other people of the province. Thousands of people gathered, and we believed that we needed to stand up in Winkler, Manitoba, and that's what we did. Thousands gathered by the side of the road. We offered nothing, no entertainment, no food, just a couple of speakers that had very little experience, including myself. And we found that there was a message that resonated in the hearts of people in Winkler, which is why we want to do it again next week. We want to bring people together and say, how is it that we can stand united in a community where others would like us to be divided? And we have seen the effects of the crisis of COVID, which is what I call it. It's far less a pandemic and much more a crisis of COVID that has been imposed on cities all over this country and all over the world. So when you look at the global, and I had the chance to live in America, in Arizona, for a number of years, I better understand America than I ever did. And I understand, as we watch the world around us, that everything is happening perhaps at different times in not complete synchronicity, but within weeks, other countries follow the same thing. There is no coincidence. All the conspiracy theorists that were mocked for all those many years are having to come up with new conspiracy theories because the old ones have been fulfilled.
You know, you mentioned something that I find fascinating. I spoke to David Dolan about this. We talk a lot every day. He's a fine patriot.
Yeah, great guy.
He's working very hard. I want to talk about the God factor for a minute. And
yes.
You might find this unusual coming from a political leader and not a preacher, but I've got to tell you, I've read that Bible from cover to cover, and I get it. Now, I find something that you just said I want to follow up on. I see it on this broadcast, and I see it on others like ours, all right? There's a thread, a common thread, where every guest we have on and kind of every place we go and speak with people, the factor of God is being brought up more and more often. The factor of prophecy is being brought up more and more. So the common thread that I see happening is, and you said it all, it's a calling. I believe what we saw take place in Canada with regard to that truckers convoy, and I'll say this till my last breath, that truckers convoy awakened the world. I mean, there was
Sure
no
did.
discussion, Carl. You know, we weren't in America. Yeah, those Canadians are great people. I mean, you could go up there and they'll hug you and they'll kiss you, and they're wonderful people. We had no idea what was going on. In America, there were protests here. The buildings are being burned down. Police are being assaulted. We got communists running all over the place. But in Canada, everything was quiet. Now we hear about this truckers convoy, and we begin to hear about violence, but not the Canadian people committing the violence. The
No,
government, the
no,
cops.
the
Let's talk about
government. And while we were in Ottawa, you know, all of this has happened for a reason and purpose. None of it has happened by chance. All of us have had a chance to witness it, which I think one of the best T-shirts we could print is Witness 2022. You saw it happen. You watched it unfold. But when we went to Ottawa as truckers and freedom fighters and moms and pops and babies, we saw every walk of life on the streets of Ottawa. There was a commonality, and the thing was, God was moving. He was moving in a mighty, powerful way. And we had a chance to interact with a lot of people on that street. And people were really looking for hope, because hope has been lost in every facet of government. Doesn't matter if you're talking municipal, provincial, or federal. In your case, you would have your county, you'd have your state, and then you'd have your federal. It's all been cast into doubt and suspicion. But we went to Ottawa, and it was amazing because we saw Spirit of God moving in the hearts. And I think one of the greatest things that came out of it is an awakening to what is happening in the world, but a spiritual awakening, that people were truly looking for hope. And that hope, I believe, I've always said it, I've never been ashamed to speak my faith, is in the life and death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And on the streets, we had people coming, walking and talking, ones that were adamantly opposed to any talk of faith, opening their hearts and their minds for perhaps the first time and saying, you might be right. Maybe that is the hope I need to count on, because all of this other stuff is just leading us to dead ends and hopeless situations. So it was an amazing time to be there. And when I later took a 3-month sabbatical in Mexico, I talked with people all over the world, Lieutenant Rogers. It was amazing as they looked at Canadians and said, look at those Canadians. Wow. And look at that Prime Minister. Ain't he something? To take on what he did, he was not up for it. And he just brought out his big hammer. He enacted a piece of legislation that should never have been used, the Emergencies Act against law-abiding citizens. Fact of the matter, while we were in Ottawa and while Ottawa was enduring the trucker convoy, the crime rate in Ottawa dropped a remarkable 70%, I believe. That the city of Ottawa, downtown, was safer than it had ever been. People were fed that hadn't been fed in a long time. There was love, there was unity, and it was an amazing thing. As even people from the next province over, which is Quebec, which is largely, or I shouldn't say largely, but has been enduring many separatist movements over the years. We had many people come over and said, you know what? I'm done with this separatism. I want to be a Canadian. I want to be united. We need to stand up against this. There was so much good that was accomplished, even though the truckers, we left Ottawa, there was no deal to be had. And worse yet, they chased him out. They used brute force, pepper spray and rubber bullets were deployed in the streets of Ottawa against peace-loving people that were only, and I say only, using their democratic right to protest. And to the people of Ottawa, we even had support there. Yeah, there was interactions that were very hostile to people that wanted their city back. But I often said to them, you realize you are living in the capital city. And when there's nothing that we can do within our own communities, we need to go to Ottawa, just like people in America go to Washington. If it can't be resolved at state and local levels, eventually, and the truckers did the same thing and went to Washington. It's just where you end up going. But what a movement.
Here's the thing that we're doing here in America, all right, based on what you guys have done in reawakening the world. We noticed that in Canada, your rights have been truly taken away. The right to worship, pastors being jailed. I saw the videos where police went into a church and tried to drag a pastor out from behind his pulpit.
I know a few of those guys personally.
Yeah, surrounded a guy's car with his family in it like a SWAT team. It looked like they were going after a terrorist. Freezing people's bank accounts. I've got so many heartbreaking letters where people couldn't get their medicine for their children because their bank accounts were frozen. All because of a dictator, a tyrant, a thug. We would call him on the streets of America a punk. And that's your prime
And
minister.
you're still being polite. Trust me. You
Yes.
haven't even gotten to the harsher words, but all of that and more. Yes.
I get angry when I even think about what this one person has done with the support, by the way, of some of the Canadian people who are out in the streets to support him and the members of parliament. Here in America, we haven't tasted what you have tasted yet. And this is why we're involved. We're trying to stop it at the border. We're trying to shore up our great, great ally, the Canadian people, and we're fighting with them side by side to prevent what has happened there here, especially when we read things about your Bill C-11, where the government over there wants to regulate the internet, communications in and out. That's communism. And you have an opportunity. I understand your Conservative Party is strong and getting stronger every day, and you're going to have an opportunity, hopefully, to send this guy Trudeau packing along with Joe Biden. Well, by the way, come November, the Republicans are taking control of our government, and then 2024, we're going to see a Republican president elected. But between now and then, you know, this is an issue. So this is why we're involved and we're glued together. And what you just articulated to the American people, and I think you said it earlier to me, if we don't stop it there, it's coming here.
Yeah. Yeah. When you feel that you exhausted all your avenues, when you're elected, and we have elected MLAs and MPs won't respond to you, they've turned their back on you. The very people you elected to go to Ottawa, to go to your state capital, in our case, our provincial capital, and articulate your concerns, when they don't want to talk to you, you just pack up and you go to Ottawa, and that's what Americans do, go to Washington. And that's the result. You live in a capital city. Unfortunately, it comes with that territory. And that's what it was. Truckers felt that they had no choice, that they were going to be, that Trudeau had the hammer. And worse yet, I mean, this was even before Trudeau had a minority government. And he was able to do what he had to do, or wanted to do, I should say, with the support of the NDP party, which has been propping him up since our last election last fall. But worse yet, and this to me was just a gaping hole in our legislation right now, is that without the necessity to form a coalition government, they formed it. Months after our federal election, Trudeau took to himself a majority government by way of declaring a coalition government in a state and time and place where none was required. Coalition governments, if you know anything about them, they're all over the world, but in our parliament system, they're there. That provision is there in case nobody can form even a minority government. But somehow, and they have been very well coached, they took to themselves the NDP party, which is essentially hijacking, NDP voters to be liberals and liberals to be NDPs. So we have this unholy marriage now in our parliament system, and they operate with impunity. They have now taken to themselves a majority government by way of coalition. That's an affront to our parliamentary system. That's an affront to anyone who voted NDP or voted liberal or simply voted. You don't do that. But that's the level a dictator would go to. That's the level he'll go to. That was the most desperate thing I've ever seen done. Well, in Parliament.
They're going to be going out the door. I believe some of them will be going to jail eventually, with Ronald Meringer and Alan Nicholson and others who are working very hard on bringing criminal charges against these people at The Hague. It's going to have a worldwide domino effect, by the way. I could tell you that, because so many in this country are going to be brought to justice, I believe, over the way. And I'm talking about politicians and those who supported them in the state legislatures. They're going to be held accountable for what I believe to be crimes against the people. Because right now, there's not much of an effort of investigations that should be taking place. I guess we're waiting for the election. But when you see things in our country like in yours, when you see the FBI get weaponized and they raid Mar-a-Lago, and you see Hunter Biden get away with all his shenanigans with regard to China, with regard to all the corruption he's involved in, and Hillary Clinton bleaches her computer with classified information, nothing is done. I mean, they must think we're really stupid. But I bring all this up for this reason. I know there's members of Congress and some of their staff members watch this broadcast. I know some members of your parliament and some of their people watch. And I tried to get a message to them. You're going to jail. You're going to go to prison. It's going to catch up to you. And if you think Joe Biden and his team in the White House, or Justin Trudeau and his team in your parliament, or his team in your capital is going to help you, they're going to throw a life raft out when the ship is sinking. No, my friend, you're going under.
These people are notorious, Lieutenant Rogers, for throwing their own under the bus. When it comes down to it, and we see what's going to happen, and it's going to be revealed. Many people are predicting that in the next month or so, we're going to see significant shifts. They will throw those them that are expendable under the bus, and they will forget that they ever knew it, that they ever knew them, that they ever said anything to them. And we're going to see that. And I believe that the justice that's going to come is from the fact that these people are going to be like rats scurrying from the sinking ship.
Oh, yeah. Look, in all my years in law enforcement, I could tell you, there's always someone that wants to sing. You sit down with these criminals, and I've dealt with a lot of organized crime figures over the years, and I've got to tell you one thing: that when somebody is facing life in prison, that's pretty scary. And many, many times you're able to sit down with some people. It's tough. The organized, I believe that what we see happening in your capital and ours is organized crime. I think that's an organized criminal enterprise. The Biden administration, the Trudeau administration. One thing I got to say about the organized crime organizations we dealt with in the past, whether it be the mafia or whatever, those guys stuck together. They were loyal to each other. And frankly, they kind of kept whatever they were doing inside their organization. Look, I was brought up in Brooklyn, New York, all right, back in the 50s. And I got to tell you, there was a reason why we lived in safe neighborhoods. There was a reason why we could walk the streets. There was a reason why you didn't have to worry about somebody mugging you and robbing you and breaking into your house. And the reason wasn't the government. The point I'm making is that when government leaders go unchecked, whether it be by a higher power, in this case, it's going to be God Almighty, I believe that, or whether by a godfather, if you will, they're going to run rampant, and they're going to be tyrants that are going to execute their policies on the people, the innocents. So my point is this: they're going to pay. They're going to pay a heavy price. And as you and I said earlier, look, they may not feel they're accountable to we the people, but at the end of the day, they're accountable to God. They could laugh at us, right? They could smirk at us, but they will be accountable for their actions against God Almighty.
Absolutely. It cannot be said enough that God sees, God cares, God knows, and God's taken names. You may escape, a prison sentence here. But let me tell you, when each of us, include myself, each of us stand before God, there are no lawyers in heaven. There's only God Almighty, and you will know, and there will be no words that moves from your lips that can contest anything, because you'll know that what you did, what you said, and everything that's a part of your life is laid out in front of you, and there's no defense. We can hope and pray, and we need to pray for these leaders because, we have examples in our faith. Saul was a major persecutor of the faith until God got a hold of him in a miraculous way. And then he ends up writing 2/3 of the New Testament and set up churches all over the area and gave his life for his faith. We don't count God enough in the fight. Our God is too small in so many ways. And even in this faith-based community that I have loved for 20 years that I've been here part of it, we see churches on the dole from the federal government to subsidize wages for pastors in the administration, and people who speak out are asked to leave the church. Where is God in our communities today? He needs to be brought front and center. And that is why I am doing one of the craziest things I've ever done and run for mayor. I have no political experience. I have the experience of life, but I'm putting my faith out there. I'm putting my convictions out there, and I want to speak the truth. And when it resonates in the hearts of people, then things will happen, because we can do whatever, we think is right. We can protest, we hold rallies, we go on all these crusades, we do these slow rolls. We've done everything we can do. But until you get to the adult table where policy is made, you will only ever be at the kids' table. We all know that analogy from when our parents had dinners. There was a kids' table where you pretty much could do what you want, not too much attention paid. When we get to the adult table where we need to be, this is where people need to stand up. They need to put their name on a ballot and then say, I want to be a part of it. You want change? Be the change. Change makers are needed. You know, I'm not an Obama fan of anything, but when he first ran in 2008, he said something that always got me. He said, if you want to change Ottawa, you bring the change to, or pardon me, Ottawa, Washington. You want to change Washington? Bring the change to Washington. You want to change Canada? Bring the change to Ottawa. You want to change your province? Bring it to your capital city. Be a part of it. This is where we need to, as I said to you in my earlier, we need to stand guard, stand a post. And I know you know that verbiage better than anybody, and stand it and protect it, because you lose it. And Ronald Reagan said it. Democracy and freedom and rights are only a generation away from being extinct. We are in that time. This is the book of Esther time, where who knows if you weren't born for a time such as this. I believe I was, and there are thousands of other people, not necessarily going to take the mic, not necessarily going to speak from a platform, but do the thing you need to do. Make a mark where it counts. Elect people who are going to be evangelical, not in just talk, but in walk, Lieutenant Rogers. Walk it out. You cannot be a talker. You must be a walker of this faith, and elect those people, because every time you elect a follower of Christ, not necessarily Christian, but elect a follower of Christ whose heart is fully devoted to his Lord and Savior, good things happen, my friend. Good things happen.
You know, you mentioned something, and I had shared this with the audience weeks ago. Indeed, those of you watching and listening, you were born for this time.
Amen.
You were born for this time. And as my guest just said, Carl, I don't want to be that generation that Reagan was talking about. I don't want to be that generation. We're not going to give it up. We're not going to surrender. We're going to fight, and we're going to stand. And this is making the Trudeau government sick. Carl, I've got to tell you, I've heard stuff. I've gotten some information and letters that they never expected any Americans to get involved in the fight in Canada. That's something they never counted on. They never expected. They think we're tied up with our own problems. But, you know, we all here that are working with this team, and it's not just me, believe me, there are a lot of people behind the scenes here in the States working very hard with the Canadian people, gentlemen and ladies, etc., like yourself on the front lines. And those are the real heroes. The people are really working hard, but they understand that they have been created for a time like this. One thing I like to mention to you, and I see it here, you probably see it there. We're going to have a national security briefing specifically for church leaders and pastors in November. It's going to be an invite-only meeting. I might invite you to that to sit in on it, okay, and to share.
Love.
But here's the problem we're running into. And the problem is the cowards from behind the pulpit. I never believed I would ever say that.
Me neither. But I hear what you're saying. Yeah,
I revere and respect any man who gets behind a pulpit, any woman who's out there fighting for what's right in that gospel. But you can't preach to the people about standing strong for freedom and liberty and then run and hide in your closet when those very people need your help. And I've urged them to come, to stand up shoulder to shoulder with those Canadian pastors. They're the ones that went to prison, not you in America. So come to a meeting, stand up, give them some, if anything, moral support. It's like pulling teeth. We've got some coming, but I'm very frustrated over the fact that literally we almost have to be a dentist and pull them and drag them. And I'm talking about of all states. But here's what I'm worried about. Well, I'm not going to be too worried about it because I know we'll overcome. But here's what I'm concerned about.
Yes, we're concerned. Yes.
Those who are not heeding the call, who are hearing the trumpet, who are hearing the pleas of their Canadian neighbors, as well as those from around the world. If we don't stop it there, well, guess what? They're going to be coming for them, for the pastors that refuse to come. The New York State Attorney General 2 weeks ago. This is incredible because I haven't heard any pastor talk about this. The only people talking about it is those of us on the air. Warned the American people and warned the pastors that they're coming for our guns. Then they're going to come for the right to worship. They're going to come and they're going to go after pastors and they're going to tell them what they're to preach. Lo and behold, the New York State Attorney General last week, 2 weeks ago, sends a threatening letter to a church in New York telling the pastor basically that if we find that you're speaking to the people in a way that's discriminatory and biased and on and on and on, that could be equal to aiding and abetting in violence, a terrorist activity. What that Attorney General was saying, you will preach sermons according to what we tell you to preach.
Exactly. We have legislation coming down the pike here that is all designed to control the narrative from the pulpit. This is not something new, but it is bold and audacious. These guys have no fear because they have already been buying a certain number of churches, and we've had churches promote the government agenda. There was one pastor of a church close by here that said, if you want to be in this chair, pointing to the pew in his church, you have to first of all go to this chair, which was a medical chair, clearly in an office where you had to get the jab. And well, you see all this, and you know, we have to. I mean, it should be the pastors who are the shepherds, the ones that offer encouragement and strength, you know, to encourage their congregations to stand. But they're the first ones to take a knee. They took the money, they take a knee, they closed the doors and said, we just got to be like Romans 13 tells us to be. Except the problem is that they take that out of context. They don't understand that when the government is as it is right now, then we must stand up. And Martin Luther King fought for this. The civil rights movement was not a waste. He said it is right and proper that we should obey, as Christians, obey the laws of man until they no longer square with the law of God.
Well, and he was right. And you know,
he was right.
In the 1700s, and I shared this with pastors here in the States, it was the pastors who led the fight in the colonies. They were the ones that got out, and they literally took their muskets and went to war, fought on the battlefield, and then went to the battlefield from behind the pulpit. And I've shared with a lot of these pastors here, you guys speak to more people on your day of worship than I will ever speak to in a month. And you can get, and we're not asking pastors to rise up and to violate laws and to jeopardize their nonprofit status. You know what we're asking them to do? To look at this law, look at it, go by what's written in here, and you'll be safe. Now let's talk about, as we begin to get close to the end here, I could talk to you forever. Let's talk about fear, right?
Right.
Folks,
right.
You have no reason whatsoever to fear the government. It is the government that should fear you.
Amen. No. And scripture affirms that. As you know, it says that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but one of judgment and sound mind. We have the confidence. You know, you want to talk about fear. The best example is the one of the disciples when Jesus rode into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday to the loud scream of Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. He knew 5 days later he was going to be on that cross. And all of his shepherd, all of his sheep would be scattered. It was written, it was foretold in ancient prophecy. And there hung a man who gave his life for us. And then he came back. And he said, I will be back. I will not. The grave will not hold me. There's something about that, you know, that you should pay attention to. And that's our hope. That's the overcomer of fear. And so when the disciples finally realized that this was Jesus come back in full body, all the fear left them. And my friends out there, if you're listening, pay attention. Jesus is the only man to have ever said all the things he said and pulled it off. You should pay attention to that. You should pay attention to that. That perfect love, that example of what he did arrests all fear. That's why today I willingly make myself a target. I'm not afraid. You should not be afraid. Fear is nothing more than false expectations appearing real. Most of you know that definition.
Turn your fear to faith. You know,
absolutely.
You're a target, I'm a target. I mean, all of us who are out here, we're targets, but you know what? They're targets, not from us. We're just telling the truth. They're targets.
They're the most vulnerable, you know, they actually are. They are. Mean, when you look at it and you know that Jesus triumphed over the grave, Every one of them that is seeking to do harm to you, to a country, to the world is a chained dog. It just hasn't come to the end of its chain. But when it does, it will be significant. And you know, our faith is one, as one of my favorite pastors said, in the end, it's going to look like we're losing. It's going to look like we lost. But you know what? We have not lost nothing.
No.
The victory is ours, my friend. All we got to do is run the race. And all this is about is making sure that people understand truth, that they are surrounded and unified in truth, not unified in lies. You know, dark and light don't have a space that they can share at the same time. And we cannot be united with liars and deceivers. We must be united in truth. Now we need to discover that truth. It's out there. It's out there. Take a look at the people that are speaking it. Pay attention. Use your God-given discerning mind to make up your own mind, and don't let them make up your mind, because if you do that, you're just being infiltrated. You're just being indoctrinated. And we see it in our schools and everywhere. It's playing out on the grandest scale. The devil is having one hell of a time right now. But we have truth on our side. That is the best. You know what? God plus one is a majority.
That's right. It. Well, as we said earlier, folks, you were made for a time like this. Don't let that time pass without standing up, standing strong.
Absolutely. You know what? And to those of you that are still questioning, where is my place in this world? What am I to do? Where's my calling? Is this my Esther moment? I say this to you. And this happened to be a saying that we picked up. It was hanging on the wall in a lady's house that gave us, you know, shelter and provided us food while we were in Ottawa. And she said, the poster said this: God is not as much concerned about your ability as he is concerned about your availability. Make yourself known. Stand up. There is Churchill talked about fear. Only fear itself.
Hey Carl, a man once told me, and I actually had this painted on a wall in my house, says that God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. And
beautiful. Love it.
That we're all qualified. That's it, my friend. This has been a pleasure. I could talk to you forever. We're going to have you back.
And I, we could talk for hours, I think.
Yeah, but before we go, tell us about your mayoral election coming up. You got a lot of people, I'm sure, from your area.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
It's been a very controversial one. I'm a little disappointed in that some of our elected are having their hand on the scale. But you know what? I have my hand on the plow. I'm going to press forward. I'm going to finish this thing, and we're going to leave it. You know, God has already made a selection. We get to participate in the election, but God knows who is going to be. And win or lose, it doesn't matter to me. I wanted to be faithful in this quest to have a spot to speak to people, encouragement, to speak truth, and let them make up their mind about who it is that they think will best serve them in this community. One of us wants it really bad, and the other one is saying, you know what? It doesn't matter if I win or lose. There's better places. God will close a door and open a window. I'm not afraid of that. But in this place right now, this is where, and this is the primary reason, is to be on a show like yours and to be on others and to be on the platform to speak to the people of Winkler heart to heart, fully transparent. Here's what I see. Here's what you might believe, what you might want to consider. Make up your mind at that point then.
Well, their hand may be on a scale, but I know where your hand is, buddy. Right there. Listen, my best to you. Our prayers are with you. We'll have you back on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure. God bless you as you continue to speak the truth on both sides of the border, my friend.
God bless you. Thank you. Stand by, folks. Don't go anywhere. Well, there you go. Isn't it wonderful? I love these broadcasts. We have people who are not ashamed of their faith, of the gospel of Christ. We've got people who are just standing strong and doing everything they could to prevent the Chinese Communist Party, a communist influence, and tyrants from spreading their evil. And that's what it is. And it's working. It is working. Canadians are winning. The Americans are winning. So, folks, that's what we're all about. Now, we're going to wrap things up. We'll be on Thursday night. This Thursday night, remember, we're tonight in Canada. We're also going to have a Friday night special broadcast regarding the farming situation in Canada. And then we'll be back next Monday night with Tonight in America. And we're expanding, we're growing, all because of you. I thank you for all your contributions and your prayers. And I'm just going to ask you to keep us in your prayers. And you see that little to donate thing there, www.campaignforamerica.com. That's our website. Like I said, $2, $3, $5. We are not funded at all by anybody, folks. Believe me. No corporations. We don't want to be beholding anybody. No government. Absolutely zero. We're funded by the people. We're funded by what the Bible would refer to as the widow's mite. And that is your mite. But always remember this. Take care of your family first, your food on the table, your kids, wives, husbands. You take care of your household first. And then if there's anything extra that you could send to us, please do so. I don't want to see this go away. And it's not going to, believe me. It's not going to go anywhere. But we got to stand strong. And the more we get the information out, the more people are going to be able to rise up within the framework of the law and do what we're doing. Now, a couple of questions about Project Maple Leaf. That is a team of Americans and Canadians. We've come together. We've been working for months on credible, actionable intelligence and information through research. The objective is to educate our lawmakers here in the United States and those in the Canadian Parliament as to what really went on and what needs to be done to rectify the problems, up to and including the prosecution of those who committed crimes against the people. I've said all along, I would like to see, and we got the videos, I'd like to see those who we believe committed crimes against the people, especially those cops. It angers me when I have to talk about cops. My family's law enforcement, the entire family going back generations of military and law enforcement. I am a law enforcement. When I see police officers commit acts against the people, the way Canadian cops did, and I'm talking about not only the physical violence, going into churches and trying to drag pastors off of their pulpits with a congregation there, breaking windows of private property on trucks and construction equipment, breaking windows, threatening to arrest people who were at the rally and left. That to me is unacceptable. And that's not going away, folks. That is not going away. And we're hoping that we have, in a very formal way, articulate what our concerns are, not only to the United States Congress, where we're going to seek sanctions against the government of Canada and Trudeau. These are things we're recommending. We can't do this ourselves, obviously, without our elected officials doing this. They can't do it unless they have credible information. And that's why we're working as hard as we are. It's going to take some time. But believe me, there are no secrets. There are no secrets, and everybody gets caught. Everybody. And these people who committed these acts against innocent people, not only here in America, but in Canada and anywhere else around the world, they're going to get caught and they're going to pay the price within the framework of the law. So that's what Project Maple Leaf is, simply to research and to educate. We're not looking to bring governments down, to interfere with the foreign affairs of the Canadian government. We're looking for justice. And that report also, we're going to send to the International Association of Police Chiefs, in which Canada is a member, and we're going to be seeking their assistance in bringing some sort of clarity to what went on here. And the reason why we're doing this so intensely is because Canada is not China. Ottawa is not Beijing. It's a free country, and it's on our border. So we want to protect ourselves, too, from anything like that ever coming here. And the way we do it is to help our allies, the Canadian people, in their fight for freedom and liberty. So that's what we're doing. So, folks, www.campaign4america.com. I believe the website on there, they take credit cards, PayPal. And if you want to send a check, we have a P.O. box. Just email us. We'll send that to you. And people have sent checks. But do whatever you can to help out. Every single dollar counts at this point. They don't want us on the air. I know they don't. They've tried, all right? They've tried to get us off by filing some sort of ridiculous violation of these standards and that standards. And every point we had to appeal certain things, and we won. We won because we're doing nothing wrong. But we need your support. All right, folks, that's it. What a great night, great evening. Thank you for joining us here tonight in America. Boy, these were started off as 20-minute broadcasts. Now they're about an hour, but we're going to cut back down so that we can have more guests on. Thank you all. God bless you. And remember, folks, we are in this fight together. And I've always said we're in this fight together forever. Thank you. God bless you. See you Thursday night when we air tonight in Canada. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers. The enemies of America and Canada may be able to intimidate, bully, and enslave some of our political leaders. But they will never be able to enslave we, the free people of America and Canada. Together we will, with unrelenting determination and unwavering commitment for the cause of freedom and liberty, march into the offices of those who embrace communism and bring our governments back to the people. Now, some of our actions may be restrained for a short period of time, but our will can't be restrained. Our fight for freedom may at times be stalled, but no matter how much time we are stalled, we the people retain the power to hold the line and advance once more toward victory. We will never quit, and we will never surrender. We are in this fight together forever, and together we will win. Let us always remember the scripture in Galatians 5:1. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm, then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery.